Hi, my name is Robin, and this is the Bold and Faithful podcast. You guys, I'm in a different location. If you are watching on the YouTube is my favorite place to watch podcasts, personally. I am in my living room. I started in my closet, okay? But the background wasn't as cute. So now I've moved to my living room, and I'm happy to be here. Today, we are talking about a subject that is not talked a lot about in the church because I don't think people actually understand it. Unless you go through abuse, it's really hard to point it out. And God has allowed abuse to be a part of my story. And I don't believe that God wastes anything. I'm going to share my testimony with you guys one day. I don't know when that will be, but I believe that God has allowed it to be part of my story so that I could help you guys who maybe don't even realize, maybe you're listening and you don't even realize you've been abused. Maybe you're just not even sure what's happening to you. And so I feel very strongly that I need to get this podcast out to help someone who is in a difficult situation, in a difficult relationship, whether it be a friendship or a romantic relationship that God is trying to call you away from. Maybe God is saying like, hey, this is not good for you. This is not what I have for you. I think the first thing I want you to know is that it was never God's intention for you to be treated poorly. It was never God's intention for you to be spoken down to, belittled, talked to as if you can't do anything right, or as if you are not a good person, or that you overreact. It is not God's heart for you to be in relationships that don't bring life to you. And so, and again, I'm talking romantic or platonic. And so I just pray that if you're listening to this podcast and you're maybe around people or in a romantic relationship, you don't feel seen in that relationship. You don't feel heard. You don't feel seen. You don't feel cared for. You don't feel loved. And you don't feel like you're being treated fairly. This podcast is for the person who's trying to figure out is it me? What is going on? Like, is there something I'm missing? Girl, let me help you. Again, unfortunately, abuse is something that was part of my story. I say unfortunately, but honestly, it's a blessing because God does not waste anything. All things work for the good of those who love him. And God didn't waste the abuse that I've endured in my life. And it hasn't been just one person, unfortunately. But God is a healer, and he has healed me of it, which has given me the ability to now be able to share it and talk about it. And so the reason that I got into abusive relationships is because in my past, there was emotional neglect. And so emotional neglect, when you're younger, will leave you feeling like you have to work for love. And it's just so opposite of God's design. And a lot of times you're unaware of it. It's something that as you seek God, he will reveal to you. It's so funny. The way that I found out was because I liked this individual who happened to be someone who had really unhealthy characteristics, unhealthy traits. And I was like, Lord, I really like this person. Reveal through circumstance if you want me with this person. The Lord literally, it was really an interesting story because the Lord literally put me serving on a conference with this person. I did not serve in this ministry. It was a young adult ministry at my church. I didn't serve in this ministry at all. The Lord put me on a conference in this ministry. My friend Leah calls me randomly. She's like, hey girl, so random, but would you be willing to serve at this conference called Awaken? We're going to call this guy Fred. She was like, you're going to be put with Fred. You know Fred, right? And Fred was the guy that I literally was like asking God about. Like, Lord, do you want me with this person? The Lord literally put me on a conference with this person. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, me and Fred are getting married. But what God, oh my gosh, but what God was really doing was allowing me to see his characteristics. And it is not God's fault by any means. So I hope you're not hearing that. I was the one who liked him. God was giving me plenty of warnings. So funny. But I was like, just like kind of insistent, like, no, God, I want to know. And so God, in his kindness, in his mercy, put me on a conference with this person and really allowed me to see him up close. And I ended up getting really hurt by this person. And that hurt was magnified because of the past emotional neglect that I had endured. And so the past emotional neglect that was undealt with was actually the reason that I was even drawn to someone who wasn't treating me right. This is why it's so important to sit with God and sit with him in your wounds. God is a master, okay? And it's so funny because the definition of awaken is to rouse from sleep. Literally, me getting hurt by this person, because there was like a blow up at the conference, kind of. It was really painful to me at the time because it was a situation where I was being treated unfairly. It was abuse. But me being confronted with the situation is what literally woke me up to the years and years of bad relationships, of emotional neglect. It was God's kindness. It's so funny. I was serving in a ministry at my church called Regeneration. I love it. It's all about healing and finding freedom. And one of the girls in the group was like, the Lord heals or wounds like a surgeon. Sometimes he wounds like a surgeon. Like, he will allow you to experience this pain and this hurt, but it really just like gets it uproots all of these things that need to be rid out of you, out of your system, and filled with the Holy Spirit so that you can walk in the fullness of what God has called you to. And so I don't know what season you're going in. If you've clicked on this podcast, you may just not know about abuse and want to learn about it, or you could be actually going through a situation where you are dealing with abuse. This is not wasted. As hard as it is, as much as it's you're feeling just the weight of it, it's not wasted. Okay, and I promise I'm going to get into the points, but first I want to tell you a story. It's so funny. God kind of foreshadowed that I was going to be getting into that situation. God had revealed to me that I had a past of emotional neglect, which was attracting individuals that were treating me in less than an ideal way, in an abusive way. And it's actually even hard to say that it was abuse. I feel like it seems like such a hard term, but it was. This impactful situation came to a head 2 years ago. Can't believe it was 2 years ago. Wow. So in 2020, when I first moved back to Dallas, I was invited to this party where they played this game called Among Us. If you're not familiar with the game Among Us, basically there's a secret murderer, secret person that will go around tagging people. The lights are off and you don't know who it is, and they go around tagging people, and if they tag you, you have to you're out essentially, and the people left have to guess who the murderer is. Okay, and there were two of us, and they had to guess between me and another person who was the murderer. In the game, you don't want the person to know who the murderer is, or like you don't want to be guessed if you're the murderer. So the person who was actually the murderer, his name was Kirk. He was like pointing and it's a game, right? So it's like not a bad thing. He was pointing his finger at me, and he was like, "It's her. She's the murderer. She's the murderer. It's her." And I was like, "No, I'm not. It's literally not me. I'm not." And everyone ended up siding with him. It was so crazy. There was one individual who was like, "Yeah, I saw her kill someone." Like figuratively, right? This is a game. He was like, some other person came up against me and was like, "Yeah, I saw her. It was her. And I remember being like, it was not me. Like, what are you talking about? You didn't see that. Like, why are you saying that you saw this when you didn't? You didn't see that. It wasn't me. And I remember just getting so frustrated that no one believed me. Like, literally no one in that room believed me. And I was like so passionate, like, it was not me. Are you kidding? And everyone was like, she's denying it. It was her, blah, blah, blah. And all of these people came up against me because of this one individual lying. That is what abuse is like. It feels like no one understands. Like, everyone is siding with the person that is actually doing wrong, and the person who is actually doing wrong is just pointing the finger at you, trying to convince everyone around you that it's you. And it's so interesting because people believe them. It is one of the most infuriating things. Now, that was just a game, right? But it's so funny. That happened in 2020, and I always think of like, oh my goodness, God, you kind of foreshadowed what was to come 2 years later, because it's exactly what happened to me in real life. And I'm not a victim. Honestly, it only worked out for my betterment. It only moved me towards the people that were actually for me. So it was the biggest blessing of my life, honestly, wrapped up in a punch, wrapped up in a bag of coal, I don't know. But God was with me the whole time. I will say, when it blew up and it came to a head, I felt so much peace while it was happening. I felt so much peace. I felt cared for. I felt protected in the midst of it. And it's just a testament that when you walk through the fire, when you go through deep waters, and when you walk through the fire, the Lord will be with you. And when the Lord is with you, it doesn't matter if you're in the best season of your life or the worst circumstance ever. You just want God to be with you, because the only thing that will give you the peace and joy in life that you need is found in the presence of God. So the abuse situation happened in 2022. I didn't know it was abuse for like 6 months. I mean, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. Okay, so for 7 months, I didn't actually know it was an abuse situation. I was like, did not understand what was happening. I was left so confused. I was like, there's no way this can be an abuser. I found myself Googling. I was like, no, I'm not sure. And I found myself just ruminating on what was happening over and over. If you are in that situation, if you find yourself like seeing, replaying a situation over and over and over, that's a good indicator that it is a trauma to you, that something's not right there, and that you're not around anyone who's really validating you. Because once you feel validated and once you feel seen, that kind of fades away. And so if you're in that position right now, you're listening to this podcast, let me just let you feel seen and heard, okay? So for about 7 months that was happening. And then God, in his kindness on my job, literally led me to a counselor. So interesting. I used to work in news, and my coworker was like, hey, you should do this story. It's with this counselor. And when I got there, I was like, I'm looking for a counselor. Do you by any chance know any? And the only reason I said that is because I was in this small group with my friend. And remember, I was going over this situation for like 7 months. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. And my friend was like, I think you need a counselor. Like, that's how bad it was. Like, she literally didn't know what to do. And she was right. It hurt in the moment, but she was right. I did need a counselor because it wasn't getting resolved in my mind. And so I went on this story shoot. This counselor that I did the story with sent me 4 people. And I looked at the list of people, and I was drawn to the person who is my counselor today, who literally helped me through this abuse situation. I thank God that he brought me to this person, because it is this person listening and validating me that was an avenue that God used to heal me. Until you feel seen and validated, it's really hard to heal abuse, because you just are left feeling like you're crazy. And what's even funnier, and how much I know it was a God thing, is 1, my bosses tried to not let me do the story. That was the enemy trying to work against me through people. And 2, she didn't even advertise that she specialized in abuse. That's what's so interesting. This counselor did not advertise that she specialized in abuse at all. Such a God thing. I saw the list of counselors. She was highlighted to me, and that's why I went. Okay, so after all that, if you are in a space where you are feeling like, man, I just want to learn about abuse, or man, I think I'm being abused, or maybe you don't even know that you're in an abuse situation and you're about to find out. These are the things that I felt like God put on my heart. And then I went back through the list with my counselor just to see, to make sure I wasn't giving you guys bad information. But here we go. If you're not sure that you're in an abusive situation, here are some things to look out for. Number 1, you feel like you can't make them mad. Like, you feel like you're trying to please them all the time. You're walking on eggshells. You feel like you have to tiptoe around your feelings. Let me tell you, in any healthy relationship I've had, I'm not scared to say anything. Like maybe some things are uncomfortable. Like maybe I'm like nervous. I'm not sure how they're going to react, but it's not like I'm scared of them. It's not like, oh, I don't want them to blow up. Oh, I don't want them to go into a crazy attack. Like that is not normal. So if you feel like you have to walk on eggshells around someone, or they're going to punish you or get mad at you, this person is not a safe individual. Number 2, they really struggle to take accountability. Everyone else is the problem. They never see that they are a problem in a situation. Everything is always outside of themselves. So they really struggle to see like, hey, with most things, you can take some sort of accountability. With most situations, you can take some sort of accountability. Like even if your part is like 1% or 2%, you can always take accountability in a situation. So a really good sign that someone is not right, they really struggle with humility. They really cannot say, hey, yeah, I was wrong. I'm sorry. That was me. They have no ability to do that, or no awareness to do that. What they're trying to do is avoid shame. So they try to avoid shame at all cost. They do this by pointing the finger at someone else, always trying to, and they really try to evade responsibility. Well, that wasn't my fault. It's because she did this, or it's because they did this. Or why didn't you, or it's your fault because you blah, blah, blah. Like it's never like, yeah. Or they just never, or like, some things just happen. Like some things are just like, it is what it is. That thing happened because it did. They'll always try to find someone else to blame. Number 3, they always have a problem with someone. They always have an issue with someone. Like they're always having issues with people in their relationships. And I'm talking like drama. There is always like some sort of drama around them. Chaos seems to follow this person. And you're like, man, are you ever just like at peace? And the thing about these individuals, because I don't want to like harbor like resentment towards anyone. The thing about these individuals is that they most likely grew up in a chaotic home or in a chaotic situation in childhood. And so these individuals only know chaos. And that is kind of like the feeling of home for them. Because they were brought up in a situation like that, they kind of feel like chaos and drama is normal. Until you wake up to that, you're not going to heal. It's just going to be a repetitive cycle, which is why there is always some sort of fight that they're in, beef with them and their friends. Like there's always something. I'm going to stop numbering because I didn't number on the list. And so bear with me. I think we're number 4, but I forgot. Oh, we kind of already said this one. I may cut this around, but when they don't get their way, it's uncomfortable. Like it's uncomfortable. It's like almost like you feel the need for them to get their way. So if they don't get their way, it's a very uncomfortable feeling for you. You feel pulled to almost make them feel better because they didn't get their way. And that is not normal behavior. Whenever you start to feel this feeling, you need to ask yourself, how do I react when I don't get my way? Do I try to make other people feel bad, or do I just like move on and it's not a big deal? Abusive individuals, they don't like being told no. They will retaliate almost. Like, my counselor always says, pay attention to how someone reacts when you tell them no. That will tell you everything that you need to know. An emotionally safe individual isn't going to get mad at you for saying no to something. They're just going to accept it. And so whenever you feel like uncomfortable around someone when they haven't gotten their way, that's a good sign that someone is not a safe person. Yeah, you'll feel pulled to make them feel better. And so this is when you need to ask yourself, how do I react when I don't get my way? Do I make a scene about it, or do I just kind of accept it and move on? Okay, next one. I think this is 5 or 4. I don't know. I'm not counting anymore. Okay, so in like normal friendships, there is conflict. Like conflict happens and you just kind of fix it. You bring it up and you talk about it, and then you work through it. And that conflict is almost like a catalyst for you to build trust and to go deeper with that friend. My cats are literally having a fight in front of me. This is like actually very fitting for this podcast. Okay. Yeah, they don't react well when you bring up a concern to them. They will flip it on you almost. So normally when someone brings a concern to you, it's because they want to continue the relationship. It's an indicator that, hey, they care enough about you that I want to continue this relationship. Normally, if I don't want to continue a relationship with someone, I'm not like digging through things with them. But if I love someone and I'm like, hey, I value you, I want to be your friend, I'm going to bring something up to you because I can't continue on with this. And so with an abusive individual, you'll go to them, you'll say like, hey, I'll use something dumb. Like, hey, I don't like the way, actually, I'll just use the example that happened to me. This person was like making jokes on my behalf. That's another sign too, honestly. But this person was like bringing me down, making jokes on my behalf. And so I came to them and I was like, hey, I don't really like the way that you're doing this, and I heard that you were, and this individual also was making up lies about, like lying about things that I had done. And so I came to them and I was like, hey, like, why are you doing this? Because I actually did like them. I thought they were fun. So I came to them and I was like, hey, why are you doing this? And they just blame shifted. They were like, oh, did blah 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 tell you that? They tried to like avoid responsibility. Okay. And they said, and they were like, oh, wow, you're sensitive. like that response is a telltale sign that someone isn't good with taking accountability. They don't know how to die to themselves and be like, hey, yeah, I did hurt you. Something happened with my best friend where we were just like, I forget exactly what we're talking about. Oh, well, I won't get into it, but a conflict arose with my best friend, and she brought it up to me like, hey, this bothered me. And I immediately, and I went and like thought about it, and I was like, you know what? It's because of this. Like, I had to be vulnerable with her, and I was like, yeah, I reacted like that because of this, and it brought us closer. It made the friendship closer. But someone who carries abusive traits won't know how to do that. And they haven't dealt with, because essentially abuse is emotional immaturity. It's just like never actually growing in the area of emotional regulation and figuring out how to take accountability. There's a lot of pride there. And so they won't know how to handle a conflict, like a basic conflict conversation, which is the way you get good relationships in your life. Because that's how you build trust, is when you go through conflict with someone and you're able to figure it out. Okay, next one. They are very likable people. This is why it's hard to spot in the church. Abusive individuals care about being liked a lot. They care. They really care about their image. They care about how they're perceived. And so they'll always try to control their image. They'll always try to control the way that people perceive them. And so this is how you know, like, that is not a good flag. Let me tell you, the healthiest people I know are the most boundaried people, one. And two, the healthiest people I know do not care if people like them or not. They'll surround themselves with really good people, which makes it even more confusing. So they'll surround themselves with like really good, empathetic people, and they'll carry on these like these relationships that aren't very deep relationships, so that you can't really tell. So they seem like they have a lot of friends. They seem like they have good graces with everyone, and like they're a really good person, but the reality is they're just not deeply known. And so they'll have a lot of friendships around them as a way to control their image and their perception, but they're not deeply known by these friends. And so it looks like, oh my gosh, they have all of these people backing them, but it's because these people don't really know them. Sad but true. So their image and how people perceive them is the priority. That is the most important thing to them. Okay, next one. They have this, I'm going to put them in their place mentality. If someone does something that someone with abusive characteristics doesn't like, they will retaliate. They will be petty. Like, I am going to put this person in their place, or this person deserves this. They will almost feel justified in hurting someone, even if what someone did was an accident, because again, they don't have emotional regulation. It truly is like dealing with someone who is emotionally stunted. A lot of abusers, they stay stuck in the age that they stay stuck emotionally in the age at which they were traumatized. And so if you've ever dealt with a toddler or a 3-year-old, if you do something that they don't like, they'll like hit you back. It's that kind of thing, that literally, which is normal for a toddler. It's not normal for someone who is an adult, right? Who's like 35 or 30. Like, that's not normal for someone, or even like 18. Like, that's not normal. And so they will be petty. They will be extremely petty. Like, I'm going to put this person in their place. They hurt me, even if you didn't mean to intentionally hurt them. They'll never come and try and seek understanding. They'll never try to get your side of the story. They will literally just try to hurt you back. And it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction. Like, they don't think about it. They'll come back and be like, I don't understand why she's mad. Because they feel justified, 1, in their actions, and 2, they don't want people to think they're bad. There's this really good book by, I forget the name of the guy. I think it's Lundy. The author is Lundy Bancroft. It's called Why Does He Do That? And he makes a really good point. He says, if abusers feel so justified in their actions, they feel justified in the way they act, then why do they try so hard to convince people that they didn't do what they did? Good question, isn't it? I don't know the answer, but I'm just trying to help you. Okay, so next one. It's a very one-sided relationship with an abusive individual. They will expect the world from you, but they won't give you anything in return. They will expect you to comfort them, be there for them, do everything for them, but will do nothing for you and not feel bad about it. So you can find it's a very one-sided relationship. Like, you're bending backward for this person, but they don't really do anything for you. And you're like, what am I doing? You'll kind of find yourself like, what is this? Ooh, this is a big one. They will rush. And this is especially for friendships or romantic relationships. It will be quick enmeshment. Healthy relationships take time. They're slow burns. Healthy relationships take time. There's a lot of, in the church especially, and listen, I believe that God gives you peace. I 100% believe that God gives you peace. I believe that God can choose your partner. I believe that God will bring about confirmation in certain relationships. But I will say that a lot of people who end up in abusive relationships, a common denominator of that is that they rushed into marriage. They will quickly enmesh. They will quickly rush into things. Like, in the person on the other side of it, you'll feel like, oh my gosh, they like me so much, they're obsessed with me. But if you really pause and take a look at it, it's like they don't really know anything about you. I believe the person on the other side listening to this is beautiful, gorgeous, stunning, so fun, the most amazing individual ever, but do they actually know that about you yet? There's this really good book called How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk, and it talks about a lever system to relationships. It's called the relationship attachment model. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll like insert it in. But if you are listening on the podcast, I'll describe it to you. It's like a lever system, and there's 5 things that you look at: the ability to know someone, the ability to trust them, the ability to rely on them, the ability to commit to them, and then touch, like intimacy. Like, no lever should be way up high while the other ones are down. The intimacy lever should not be all the way up if the no lever is down. And by no, I mean how long you've known them. And so then the intimacy lever should not be all the way up if the no lever is like down. And the trust lever shouldn't be all the way up if the no lever is like down. And if you're listening on podcasts, I'm going to put this on the Instagram so you're not confused about what I'm talking about because you may need to look at it for reference, but that's a good way to test. So the level that you trust someone should not be higher than the level that you know them. Like, relationships take time to really know someone. You don't know someone is trustworthy if you've known them for a day. You can trust them. You can say like, hey, I'm going to choose to believe that you're trustworthy, but you don't actually know them to be trustworthy because you just met them. People who carry abusive tendencies will rush into relationships really quickly because they want you to be attached to them before you actually discover the reality. Whether that's them doing it consciously or unconsciously. I don't believe it's the people doing it. I believe it's the spirits operating behind them too, that are attached to their trauma, that are attached to their unforgiveness. But spirit realm is a whole other podcast, girl or boy. But yes, so they rush and they quickly enmesh. It'll almost feel like overwhelming, like, oh my gosh. It shouldn't feel overwhelming. Healthy relationships, they feel steady, they feel safe. I love podcasting. It's always like such a I'm gonna pause, break. It's always like such a hard get to the podcast because the enemy wants to fight it so much, but once I'm here, I enjoy it. They will love bomb you. Again, friendships or romantic relationships. And that goes into the quickly enmeshing. Love bombing is just like singing your praises without actually knowing you. Oh my gosh, you're the best person I've ever met. You're amazing. We're going to be best friends. And it's like, I met you a day ago. Like, we're not best friends, okay? Which sounds harsh, but it's true. Like, people who have an agenda will sometimes attach themselves to you without actually knowing you. It's like, I just met you. I don't know you. Like, I have to get to know you. And that's wisdom. It's wisdom to go slow, to wait for confirmation from God, to really see and ask God. That's another thing I would encourage you. Ask God about the relationships in your life. Lord, is this person safe for me? Lord, does this person need to be in my life? The thing God does the most and most effectively in my life is remove people. Remove people that are not for me. So don't be afraid to bring him into it. It's Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. He will direct your path. So God will guide you into the relationships that you need to be in, and he will guide you away from the ones that you don't need to be in. Okay, so they're really nice. And so this one is probably confusing, but they do nice things, but with wrong motives. So they're not nice because it goes back to the image thing. Like, they're not nice because they have a kind heart. They're nice because they want people to think they're a good person. They want people to think that they are above and beyond, but they'll do these nice things. They'll give gifts. They'll give you money, whatever it is, because they want to hook you in and they want to leave you hooked. They don't actually care about you. They just want you to think they're a good person. And this goes into their image and people believing that they're a good person. So they'll do nice things, but they'll have a wrong motive. Again, if you ask God, the Holy Spirit will give you discernment and reveal to you who's doing this. But remember, be shrewd as a snake, innocent as a dove. So you can notice these things, but you don't have to call it out. Just notice it and then create the boundary. I mean, you can call it out if you want, but I don't know if it's wisdom to do that. Just create the boundary. Notice it. See, like, hey, this person, it's a form of manipulation almost. Like, I'm going to do this nice thing, so they do this for me. I'm going to do this nice thing, so they do this for me. I always just, when I come across an individual like this, because they're more common than I think people realize, I just kind of notice the behavior and back up. Shrewd as a snake, innocent as a dove. If they sense a problem and they sense that you are catching on to them, they will make sure to convince everyone that you are the problem. They will do this long before you even realize that they're doing it to you. Long before you realize you're being abused or that you've done anything, they will go around convincing everyone that you're a bad person so that others will side with them. Remember that thing at that party? It's kind of like that. Like they will try to convince everyone around you that you are the crazy person, that you are the bad person, and that you're unforgiving. But in reality, you're just like, no, this person was really unkind to me. So they really like to control narratives around people so that no one thinks they're bad. And they'll even have people being like, you need to go talk to X, Y, and Z. And so here's an example. Like, they will play the victim. Even if they're the ones that hurt you, they will play the victim. And so they'll go around to the people that they're trying to control the narrative to and be like, I don't know why she has a problem with me. I don't understand what's wrong with her. I don't understand. But then to you, they were awful to you. They were super unkind to you. And so obviously you're going to back away, but then they'll go to everyone else and be like, I don't know what her issue is. And so it'll cause people to go around you, be like, what's wrong, Robin? Why aren't you I heard you haven't talked to X, Y, and Z in a while. Why aren't you talking to this person? And so be aware. It's very manipulative behavior. Again, I blame the spirits behind these people, not the individuals themselves. It's got demon written all over it, you know? Okay, so these individuals work for God, but they don't actually bear fruit. So a lot of abusive individuals actually thrive in the church, which is a very scary thing. I'm like sad I just said that, but it's true. A lot of abusive individuals, let me say, they'll thrive in a church that puts a lot of emphasis on works, okay? That's why it's so important to rely on the Holy Spirit. It's so important to acknowledge the Holy Spirit, because if you're in a works-based place, it will be hard to spot. Because they're really good. Because remember, they care a lot about their image. They care a lot about how they're perceived. So they will go out of their way to do all the things, to serve in all the ministries, to be the person that's needed and helped. And they'll even have an in with really influential people in the church. But here's the thing, you'll know them by their fruits. They will do all of these things, but they will not bear fruit. I'm going to read Galatians 5:19 through 22. It says, the acts of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity and debauchery, idolatry and witchcraft, hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Wow. Isn't it scary that envy, jealousy, and discord are on that list? When's the last time you were jealous? When's the last time you were in discord with someone? That's scary. Verse 22, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So you need to ask yourself, if you're like confused and you're not sure, ask yourself, okay, this person serves in the church, they're doing all the right things, they're praying all the right things, okay, but are they loving? Do they love you? Are they joyful? Do they carry a joy when they act out the things that they do? Or are they complaining a lot? Are they super negative about having to serve? Or are they really joyful in it and excited to do it? Do they carry this peace? Are you around them and you just like feel the peace of God on them? There are certain people that you just feel the peace of God on them. Are they like that? Or do you leave them feeling like, ugh, I feel like I need to go pray or something. I feel like I need to go pray. How do you feel when you leave this individual? Are they patient? Are they really kind? How do they speak about people? Are they good? Are they faithful and loyal? Or are they speaking bad about the people that they're connected to? Speaking bad about the people they're serving with in the form of venting? Are they gentle? Do you feel safe with them? And do they have self-control? Or are they in the same sin that they say they've been repenting to God about for years and years and years, but they haven't actually won out? And I tread on that lightly because it does, some people, it is a battle, but eventually if you have Jesus, you will see, you will lay down sin. you don't just go on sinning. There's a self-control in their lives. And so really ask, do these people bear fruit? Okay, if you're watching the YouTube video, it's getting dark outside. And so it's getting darker if you're noticing the light change. Hey-o, but we're almost done. You will know them by their fruits. There's a lot of people in the church that can do a lot of good things for the church, but you cannot bear fruit without the Holy Spirit of God. Okay? That's all I need to say about that. This is the last one. They will use their story as a way to garner empathy. And so their testimony, they'll be like, well, I was abused. So say you bring an issue to them and you're like, why did you act that way? Like, why did you slap me in the face? That's an extreme example. But you'll be like, man, why did you hurt me in that way? Well, they'll be like, well, it's because I was abused as a kid. You have to take note of this. That is not taking accountability for their actions. And I'm not negating the fact that they maybe did have a hard childhood. Maybe they did. But what happened to them at 8 years old is not an excuse for how they act at 35 or at 30. There's a level of accountability that needs to take place. And I say this as someone who has had a past, okay? I've had hard things in my past. So I'm not saying, oh, but those hard things aren't an excuse for my behavior today. I'm in Jesus Christ and I'm free. The Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So I've done the work to get free of my past. I'm not a victim of my past. It's the story that God allowed, and it's the story that is helping people today, right? So if someone is abusive, they'll try to use this as a way to hook you in or excuse their behavior. And so you find yourself constantly excusing bad behavior. If you find yourself really resonating with this list, I want you to know that there's healing to be done for you. I want you to know that God led you to this because he wants to help you, and that you can get free of the relationship that you're in. You don't have to stay stuck here, and just know that healing is possible for you. It can be really hard to uncover this. It can be overwhelming. It can be exhausting to be in these relationships, but I want you to know that healing comes with Jesus Christ. And so seek him. Ask him to help you heal. Ask him to lead you to the right counselor. And he will. Just know that I see you. More importantly, God sees you. And he led you to this because he wants to heal you. It can be hard to come to the fact that, like, oh my gosh, this person is lying on me. Oh my gosh, this person isn't taking accountability. And everyone is siding with them. They've convinced everyone that I'm the bad person. But I want you to take heart. Remember that story I told you about of the game of Among Us, and everyone believed this person. Everyone believed that this person wasn't the killer. Guess what happened at the end? The truth came out. The truth came out. God is your vindicator. And it can be really hard to face this situation. I think one thing I struggled with a lot was unforgiveness. And so I want you to stay tuned for the next Bold and Faithful episode, because I'm going to be talking about how to forgive really anyone, but especially those who have wronged you. And I just want to leave you with this verse, because it can be overwhelming to discover this, to discover that this is something you've encountered. And I want to leave you with this verse. It's 1 Timothy 5:24-25. Me and my counselor discovered this. We were like, what? This is so good. It says, the sins of some people are conspicuous or obvious, going before them to judgment. But the sins of others appear later. So also, good works are conspicuous, and even those that are not cannot remain hidden. If you're someone who feels wronged, who feels like the wicked prevail, and your good deeds are never seen or whatever, that verse brings so much comfort. But what brings even more comfort is that God sees everything. God does not leave the righteous forsaken. No weapon forms against a righteous person and prospers. Every tongue that's rised up against you, you will be able to refute. That is the vindication for the righteous. And so it's really hard when you feel justified in being wronged, when you're mad that you've been wronged. But I want you to know that good deeds can't remain hidden forever, just like abuse cannot remain hidden forever. Whether it's in this life or on Judgment Day, the person that hurt you was under the influence of evil. It wasn't them. And two, God is a really good vindicator. So take heart. And the next episode, this one's getting long. So the next episode will be about how to forgive an abuser. But again, you're not alone. I've been through it. It was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life on a healing level. But I will say that you are going to get through it. And I can't wait. I can't wait for you to come out on the other side. I love you so much. This is the Bold and Faithful podcast. And I hope you enjoyed. Bye. Yay. That was fun.